I came back to my home country. I had a lot of money saved up. I went to a baby shower for a kid that belonged to someone I used to know from school. I was shocked to see that the woman holding and feeding the baby was Sarah, my wife. We'd been married for 5 years. Our old school friend Mark asked her, "What if he ever finds out about all this?" Sarah just shrugged and said, "So what? He needs me." My stomach felt sick. I called my business partner. "Remember how you asked if I wanted to stay overseas and be a partner? I've decided I want to do it." "That's fantastic," my partner said, his voice full of excitement. "With you on board, we can really grow the business. I'll get everything ready, and we can leave together in 3 days." I felt a little better, hearing how happy he was. Just then, the front door opened. Sarah, wearing a big, loose dress, looked at me, surprised. The baby stuff she was carrying fell to the floor. "Why did you come back so suddenly?" she asked, rushing to pick things up, not looking me in the eye. I didn't say anything, just watched her. A year ago, I had to go work overseas. Sarah, who I had taken care of for 4 years of marriage, was still beautiful and young-looking. Now she seemed worn out, her body bigger. Even the loose clothes couldn't hide it. I felt bad for her, but she seemed to be doing this to herself. Maybe what I had been giving her was never what she really wanted. She saw I wasn't going to answer, and she seemed to remember what day it was. "Did you come back for our anniversary? You could have told me." She actually started to complain. I still didn't say anything, and she looked at the table, then at my empty hands. Her face immediately changed. "If it's our anniversary, why didn't you make dinner? Where's my present?" For the 5 years we'd been married, I had always treated her like she was the most precious person. Every holiday was a reason for me to spoil her. I'd make a big, fancy dinner and buy her whatever gift she wanted most, all to make her happy. But today, I didn't need to do that anymore. I kept seeing her happy face, holding that baby at the party. "I'm too tired," I said, not really caring. "I don't feel like it." The next second, she actually threw her bag down in anger. It made a loud thump. "Tom, we haven't seen each other in a year, and this is how you act?" she yelled, completely forgetting how she had been acting. If this had happened before, I would have started screaming, asking her about the baby. But everything that happened today made me not even want to ask. The love I felt for her broke into a million pieces the moment I saw that child. I didn't expect anything from her anymore. I stood up and looked at her coldly. "What, weren't you full from the party?" She froze. After a bit, she said, "You know I went to Mark's baby shower, right?" Mark, our old friend from college. Of course I remembered. He was her ex-boyfriend, but they'd only dated for 3 months before he broke up with her. When she told me about it, she had made fun of him, saying, "I was so stupid back then, dating Mark. Now he's begging me, but I wouldn't even consider him." I believed her, but it turned out I was the stupid one. Maybe feeling bad, she said she was going to the bathroom to get away. As soon as I heard the water running, I looked at my phone and saw a new post from Mark. In the picture, he was holding a 1-month-old baby, looking really happy. The caption said, "Thank you for making my mom's last wish come true and making my life complete." A sharp pain went through my chest. What a perfect life. But what about my mom and me? For 4 years after we got married, I had wanted a baby, but Sarah always pouted and said she wasn't ready. Then, a year ago, my mother died in a car accident. Her last words were, "My son, my biggest regret is that I didn't get to see you have a child. I'm sorry I let you down. Mom, I'm sorry, I failed you. I was blind and chose the wrong person. I let you die with this sadness." While I was thinking about all of this, Sarah came out of the bathroom. Seeing my red eyes, she ran into my arms. "I'm sorry, honey. I shouldn't have talked to you like that." She still had that familiar jasmine soap smell. I used to love the way she smelled after a shower. Every time she finished, I would hold her close for a long time, but now it made me feel sick, like I wanted to throw up. I pushed her away. "It's okay." Her face went stiff, and she looked like she wanted to yell, but she stopped herself. "You haven't eaten, right? Let me make you some noodles." This was probably the first time she had ever offered to cook for me, but I didn't feel happy. Just as I was about to say no, she went into the kitchen and started cooking, her long hair falling over her shoulders. The warm scene used to be my dream. Suddenly, her phone, which was on the shoe rack, rang. I looked over without meaning to and saw who was calling. My heart felt like it was stabbed again. It said husband, but I was clearly sitting right behind her. She ran out of the kitchen and answered the phone right in front of me. "Hello, Mark?" "Don't worry, I'll be right there." She hung up, and while putting on her shoes, she didn't even look at me. "Honey, Mark's baby seems to be sick and won't stop crying. He's a guy, so he doesn't know what to do. I'm going over to help," she added. "Mark's wife died when she had the baby, and he couldn't handle it, so he asked me for help. Don't get the wrong idea." I almost laughed. I was so angry. To lie to me, she even cursed herself. "You can go," I interrupted her calmly. She looked at me, surprised, but she still chose to rush off to Mark. She didn't come back for a long time. After I washed up and lay down, I saw that Mark had posted again. The photo showed a bowl of half-eaten noodles, with Sarah in the background feeding the baby. It was a live video with the sound on. I heard Mark ask, "Can you stay the night?" Sarah's answer was quick. "Sure, I'll figure out how to explain it to him." I looked at the kitchen. The noodles were still in the pot, half-cooked, not touched. Just like the marriage I had insisted on for 5 years, given up halfway. Because the main person was now cooking noodles for someone else, comforting a child, and staying over. I liked Mark's post. He deleted it immediately. The next second, Sarah called. "Honey, the baby has a fever and needs someone to take care of him. I won't be home tonight." But don't get the wrong idea. I'm just helping Mark out. We have clear boundaries. Clear boundaries, huh? The boundaries for him to have children with her. After so many lies, I didn't even feel upset. "Do whatever you want. I'm going to sleep." I hung up and closed my eyes. But memories of my past with Sarah filled my mind. The bright moon once shined on me, too. Back then, we were in college together. She was the prettiest girl, and I was the most popular guy. Everyone said we were perfect, but I didn't think much of her because she had so many guys chasing her. It wasn't until a party, when she stood up to stop someone from forcing me to drink, her small body standing in front of me like an angel, that I started to like her. From that day on, I was completely in love, starting a 3-year-long secret crush. When we graduated, rumors spread that she had cheated, and everyone thought badly of her. I didn't hesitate to tell her how I felt, helping to clear her name. She gratefully ran into my arms, promising me, "In this life, I will never betray you." After we got married, we were happy. I thought we would have a perfect ending, like in a movie. But reality hit me hard. The next day, Sarah still didn't come home. She only sent me a text saying she was still taking care of Mark's child. I didn't reply. The next morning, I heard sounds from the kitchen. Following the smell of food, I walked out of the bedroom to find Sarah wearing an apron, smiling at me just like in my old dreams. "Honey, you're awake. Go wash up and eat breakfast." I used to be lost in the beautiful dreams I had made for myself, but now it was time to wake up. I walked to the sofa and sat down, shaking my head at Sarah. "I don't want to eat." Her face changed, and she was about to get mad. I spoke before she could. "Let's talk." Talk about what? Sarah was confused, still wearing the apron, looking like a perfect wife and mother. But all of this change wasn't because of me. When she sat down, I said, "Let's talk about your studies this past year." A year ago, when I was sent overseas for work, I found out she had quit her job. When I asked her on the phone, she stuttered and told me, "Actually, I got into graduate school. I didn't tell you because I was afraid you'd be against me going back to school." How could I be against her studying? 3 years of secret love, 5 years of marriage, 8 years in total. I was like her trained dog. She threw a ball and I wagged my tail to get it. Not only did I not oppose her, I even sent her 50,000 yuan for her tuition. Now I realized that money was spent on her pregnancy. That child was healthy and chubby, and part of it was because of me. "Why are you suddenly asking about this?" Sarah's face turned pale, not sure how to keep up the lie. After all, it takes 100 lies to cover up one. Looking at her, I didn't even want to keep asking. I pulled out the photos I had taken at the baby shower and put them on the table. "How long were you planning to keep lying to me?" The room was quiet for a few seconds, and all the color drained from Sarah's face. She jumped up, and her first reaction was to question me. "You secretly went to the baby shower? Why didn't you tell me?" I stared at her. "If I told you, would you have enjoyed this little performance?" She froze for a moment, then acted like she was in the right. "This isn't betrayal. I was just helping Mark. His mother was really sick a year ago, and her dying wish was to hold her grandchild. You don't understand. He and his mom were so sad back then. If you were me, you'd choose to help too." My eyes turned red. "They were sad, huh? What about my mom and me? My mother died with regrets, and she saw everything. But she never wanted to have children with me. Did she really love me? I didn't say I wouldn't have children with you. Your mom just had a short life and didn't make it to that day." My whole body stiffened, and my heart completely died. Up until this point, I had thought Sarah was just a bad person. But I never realized that she had no heart at all, let alone love for me. I stood up, raised my hand, and slapped her hard across the face. "Say something bad about my mom again and see what happens." She covered her face, shocked and not believing it. "You dare hit me, Tom? Have you gone crazy? Get down on your knees and apologize now, otherwise I'll divorce you immediately." She always thought I couldn't live without her. After all, in the 5 years of our marriage, every time she mentioned divorce, I would cry and beg her, telling her how much I needed her. But this time I couldn't kneel. My heart wasn't hers anymore. "No need for an otherwise. Let's just get a divorce." I threw the divorce papers in front of Sarah. She picked them up, looked at them, and then threw them back at my chest. "Tom, do you really think you can live better without me? After 5 years of marriage, you're still living in the crummy house your mom left you. Which woman would look at you except for me? I suggest you take back what you just said before I'm completely disappointed in you." I smiled slightly. She used to say things like that, and it didn't bother me. But now, with me leading, the company overseas had already made a lot of money. The $1 million reward the company promised me had already been put in my account. I hadn't said anything beforehand because I wanted to surprise her. Now I'm glad I kept it a secret. "But I'm already completely disappointed in you," I said calmly. She froze for a moment, her face full of disbelief. For 8 years, I had been putting myself down, but suddenly I wasn't the same anymore. She couldn't believe it, and she didn't want to. She suddenly turned and left. "Take some time to cool down. Apologize when you've thought it through." If I hadn't done anything wrong, why would I apologize? I watched her leave without trying to stop her, because I still had a lot to do. I took down all our wedding photos and threw them in the trash. I also got rid of every trace of my existence in this house, including the sofa, the TV, and the bed I had bought. Finally, I called the real estate agent to come take photos and put the house up for sale. Once everything was done, I grabbed my suitcase and headed downstairs. Just as I was about to get a taxi by the side of the road, I noticed Mark holding the baby. He walked straight towards me. "Tom, you're really going to divorce Sarah over a child?" "Don't get me wrong, I don't mean anything by it. I just wanted to say, if you're willing to let go, that would be great. After all, Sarah will be mine then." He really thought I had no anger. I raised my fist and punched him in the face. He yelled in pain and stumbled back. The baby in his arms was startled and cried loudly. "Jerk! How dare you hit me!" Without caring, he put the screaming baby back in the car and grabbed my collar, trying to hit me back. I caught his wrist, but suddenly an angry shout came from behind. "Tom, stop!" Sarah, holding a pack of diapers, rushed over. Mark immediately started acting. As she reached us, he suddenly kneeled in front of me with a loud thud. "Tom, I know I've wronged you. I shouldn't have asked Sarah to help me have a child. But no matter what, the child is innocent. How can you hit my child? If you're really angry, I'll disappear with the child forever." His nose was still bleeding, and he was a mess. Sarah, her face red with anger, threw the diapers at me and kicked my knee. I wasn't ready for it, and the sudden pain made me bend down, clutching my knee. On the day I came back, I had been in such a rush to see her. When I got off the plane, I tripped and fell down the steps, hurting my knee. But she didn't care. She just screamed at me. "Tom, you jerk! What did the child ever do wrong?" I was in so much pain that I couldn't even make a sound. Only then did Sarah look down at me, noticing the blood stains soaking through my pants. Her expression changed, and she was scared. "Tom, what happened to your leg?" Before she could finish, Mark's voice called out from behind her. "Sarah, the baby's not crying anymore. Come quickly and check." Without hesitation, Sarah left me again and rushed toward Mark and the child. She picked up the baby, looked at him, and immediately told Mark, "Let's go to the hospital." As they got into the car, she looked back at me through the window. "Tom, I'll deal with you when I come back." Once their car was out of sight, I got into a taxi to the airport. At the airport, not long after, I saw Mark had updated his status again. In the photo, his nose was wrapped in bandages, but his smile was proud. The caption read, "Someone promised to make it up to me by giving me a second child. Finally, I can have a perfect family, with both a son and a daughter." The airport announced my flight was boarding. As I walked up the stairs, I sent Mark a message. "Hope you have a whole soccer team." Then, I turned off my phone, threw my SIM card away, and boarded the plane easily. The first thing I did after arriving overseas was buy a house for myself. I had stayed overseas for a whole year, but in order to save money and give Sarah a better life, I hadn't rented a place. I had been living in the dorm provided by the company. But now, I could finally spend money on myself, without hesitation. After buying the house, I went ahead and bought a car, too. When I drove to the office, I was warmly welcomed by everyone. They all congratulated me for becoming a partner and reaching the top of my career. As I looked at my very own partner office, I couldn't help but laugh. They say there are 3 great joys in life: getting promoted, making money, and your wife passing away. My wife didn't die, but she might as well have. A fellow partner quietly asked me, "Tom, I thought you said you were going back to your wife in our hometown. Why did you suddenly agree to come overseas?" I responded directly, "She's dead." The partner thought I was joking, but my gaze was firm. He paused for a moment and then patted me on the shoulder. "My condolences. You know, I have a good friend whose daughter is about your age. She's a nice girl. How about I introduce you two?" I shook my head. It wasn't because I still had feelings for Sarah. It was simply because my marriage wasn't over yet, and I didn't want to waste this girl's time. The next morning, I called a really good divorce lawyer. Upon hearing my situation, he was filled with righteous anger. "Don't worry. You've definitely got the advantage in this case. After all, there's plenty of evidence of your wife's affair. The man's social media, the photos you took, these are all proof. I'll file a lawsuit for you and make sure she walks away with nothing. She won't get a penny from you. Just wait for the good news. I had just become a partner and had a lot of work to do, so I entrusted the entire divorce process to the lawyer. Before the lawyer got back to me, I received some good news from a real estate agent back home. Mr. Miller, your property has been viewed by a buyer. He's very satisfied and wants to sign the contract immediately. When would you like to come over to finalize things? I thought I could handle it remotely, but the agent said, "No, you have to be here in person. This is a contract worth over $1 million, and no one wants to take responsibility if something goes wrong." I reluctantly agreed. "Fine. I'll come over this weekend." Half a month after arriving overseas, I bought a return flight ticket to my hometown. This time, however, I wasn't flying in economy class. I had upgraded to business class. As soon as I sat down, I realized how spacious the seats were, and how sweet the flight attendants' smiles were. Leaving Sarah behind, life could actually be this good. When I landed, I immediately headed to the signing center. But just as I was about to enter, I was shocked by a woman standing at the door, her hair messy and her appearance uncared for. It was cold, but she was wearing a thin, long dress. Her long hair, which seemed to have been unwashed for days, was greasy and stuck to her face. Only when she rushed toward me did I recognize her. This woman who looked like she had nothing was Sarah. I was stunned. I had thought that after leaving me she would easily be with Mark and have a second child. Her life should have been better by now. But she marched straight up to me, staring at me in disbelief. "Tom, it's really you. You're back." I didn't know how to respond, and before I could say anything, she yanked at her neck and yelled, "Where have you been these past few weeks? I couldn't find you anywhere." "You didn't answer your phone. You didn't reply to my messages. What are you trying to do? Are you done yet?" Her shouting made my ears ring. Just then, the agent came out and saw me, calling out, "Mr. Miller, you're here! Quick, quick, the buyer is waiting for you inside!" But Sarah suddenly pointed at the agent and yelled at me, "Tom, this is the guy. He changed the locks on our house. He won't let me back in. He brought people to show the house, trying to sell it behind my back. You have to call the police." Sarah seemed to have lost her mind. I pushed her hand off my clothes and spoke calmly. "I changed the locks. I also told him to sell the house." "Sarah, have you forgotten? I already told you that I want a divorce. You're free now. You can have as many children with Mark as you want." The scene was quiet, and I was sure Sarah had heard what I said. I was also certain that in the past week my divorce lawyer had already been in touch with her, but I didn't understand why she was pretending not to know. I didn't care to say more, so I signaled the agent to get ready to go inside and sign the contract. At that moment, Sarah blocked my path. She shakily raised her hand, showing me the wedding ring I had given her 5 years ago when I proposed. The diamond was small. Back then, I was poor. But I had sworn to her, "When I make money, I'll buy you a diamond 10 or 100 times bigger than this. I'll make sure you never have to live in hardship." With tears in her eyes, she pointed to the ring and said, "Husband, don't you remember? When you put this ring on my finger, you promised you'd always treat me well. I've never taken it off." I turned my face away. "I've forgotten." In fact, on the day I returned home for a baby shower, I brought back $1 million pink diamond, intending to give it to her. But she betrayed me. "Tom, how could you do this to me? There were so many guys who liked me back in school. I chose you, someone who had nothing. Now you've wasted 5 years of my youth and you're throwing me away? I won't agree to this." So it wasn't about her disagreement. It was about her unwillingness to let go, because I had demanded she leave with nothing. I smiled. "If you won't divorce, we'll go to court. I can drag this on, but what about you? Mark is waiting for you to go home. The child needs you too. How long can you drag this out?" I expected Sarah to be furious and hit me, so I even took a step back. But to my surprise, Sarah stood there quietly, tears streaming down her face, dropping in large droplets. "Tom, I swear, there's nothing between Mark and me." I was about to interrupt her lies when she pulled out a crumpled document. "There's no intimacy between us. The child was conceived through a medical procedure. How could I betray you?" She looked at me with tear-filled eyes, more sad than I could say. For a moment I saw the girl from the past, the one who would cry as soon as she was upset, standing in front of me. Back then, whenever she cried, I wanted nothing more than to give her my heart. But now, seeing her like this, I felt no pity at all. "Whether the child was conceived naturally or through a medical procedure doesn't matter anymore. I'm divorcing you." Just as I was about to leave, Sarah started crying hysterically. Suddenly, I heard Mark's voice from behind. "Tom, you're a real jerk. You have no sympathy for her. Even if you want a divorce, you shouldn't leave Sarah with nothing. She's been with you for 5 years. She may not have achieved anything, but she's endured a lot for you." I didn't know whether to laugh or not. For these 5 years, I had been supporting Sarah. I hadn't given her a life of luxury, but I'd never treated her unfairly. I turned to Mark and asked, "She's had a child for you, and what have you given her in return?" Mark's face stiffened, and he was at a loss for words. I sneered. Mark cursed at me from behind. "I've always told Sarah not to get involved with someone like you, a so-called gold digger. When it comes to divorce, you'd want to strip a woman bare. Don't worry, I'll take care of Sarah from now on and give her the best life. You poor loser can just wait." I didn't look back as I walked into the signing center. After selling the house, $1.5 million was directly transferred to my account. My return flight was tomorrow. I went to the hotel and dropped off my luggage. Just as I settled in, Sarah actually called me. "Tom, please save me." I had no idea what kind of trick Sarah was trying to pull this time. I was on high alert. "If you need help, you should be calling the police," I said. But she cried, "No, the police can't help me. My child has been diagnosed with a heart problem from birth and needs heart bypass surgery. Only you can help me now." I was at a loss for words. Whenever something good happens, I'm not the one she thinks of. But when she needs money, I'm the first person she calls. She never fails to disappoint me. Without hesitation, I rejected her. "I don't have the money." She was stunned. "Tom, no matter how much you hate me, the child is innocent. How can you just stand there and watch as the child suffers without treatment? Do you have no compassion?" I almost laughed in anger. The child isn't even mine. Why should I feel compassionate? Besides, just recently, Mark had been cursing me out as a poor gold digger, claiming he would take care of Sarah. I asked her, "You're not calling the child's father, you're calling me? Are you out of your mind?" Sarah stammered. He can't come up with that much money. What he said before was just to act tough." This time I really laughed. But that laugh quickly faded. Mark has nothing, and she was willing to have his child. Yet I had given her everything, and she wouldn't love me in return. Before I could speak, Sarah said again, "You just sold the house and got a large sum of money, didn't you? Please, lend me $500,000. With my current financial standing, $500,000 wasn't a problem. But if that money was going to save Mark's child, that was a different matter. I didn't have a kind heart like a saint. I would love to punch Mark again. I blurted out, "Why should I? You don't really think I still love you, do you?" There was silence on the other end of the line. It was as if Sarah had died. After a long pause, she spoke, her voice cracking with tears. "I don't dare hope, but if you lend me this money, I'll agree to divorce you. Is that okay?" She was so humble. So humble that it was as if she had fallen into the dirt. But I felt no pleasure, only relief. I agreed immediately. Fine, I'll give it to you. As long as it meant cutting ties with her, I would spend $50,000, $500,000, whatever it took. I took the bank card and went to the hospital. Sarah was leaning against the wall, covering her face and crying. I pretended not to see her, simply handing her the card and pulling out a piece of paper and a pen. Words aren't enough. Write me a note to prove that this $50,000 is buying out our marriage. $50,000, buying out a marriage. When I said that, her tears flowed like a faucet. I had done my final duty, and now I gave her a warning. Don't rely on men to live. Get a job. You can't count on someone like Mark. As soon as the words left my mouth, Mark suddenly charged at me. When his fist came at me, I caught it with my hand and then kicked him hard in the knee, just like the day Sarah had hit me for him. Mark screamed in pain, clutching his knee and collapsing to the ground. To my surprise, Sarah didn't rush to help him. Mark, furious, yelled, "Tom, you poor loser, stop pretending. You only got some money from selling your house, and now you think you're a savior, and—" His voice cut off abruptly. I pulled out my phone and showed him my bank account balance. There were so many zeros at the end of the number that I hadn't even bothered to count them myself once. Sure, I'm not as great as you. I'm just a partner now, making over $10 million a year from dividends. The place fell into dead silence. I took the signed note from Sarah and left. Sarah, 9 a.m. tomorrow, at the courthouse. The next morning I waited for a long time, but Sarah didn't show up. When I tried calling her, her phone was unreachable. Just when I was about to call the police, they found me first. Hello, are you Tom, Sarah's husband? I didn't confirm or deny anything. I just asked, has something happened to her? I had many scenarios running through my mind, but never the one the police described. She's on the bridge and threatening to jump into the sea. She's been there for over an hour now, and we can't convince her to come down. We need you to come with us to the scene. I got into the police car. At that point, I still didn't realize how serious the situation was. It wasn't until I started receiving messages from some old classmates that I understood the magnitude of what was happening. Tom, you're trending. Damn, I never thought you'd be this kind of guy. Sarah was our school's prettiest girl. How could you treat her like this? I opened the class group chat and was immediately shocked by the flurry of messages. Everyone was talking about my divorce with Sarah, but the story they were telling was completely different from the truth. In this version, I was a heartless villain. I hadn't gone abroad to give Sarah a better life. I had gone to keep other women there. I had brought back over $10 million, but the first thing I did was ask Sarah for a divorce. When she refused, I secretly sold the house and fled abroad by myself. Now Sarah's child was seriously ill in the hospital, and I was allegedly threatening her to sign divorce papers before I would give her money for the treatment. That was why Sarah had apparently been pushed to the edge and tried to take her life. The reason people were so sure of this version of events was because Mark had sent out screenshots of their conversations, where he solemnly swore with his honor that everything was true. I couldn't help but laugh at the boldness of those two. The police probably thought I had lost my mind. When we reached the overpass, Sarah was standing outside the guardrail, looking ready to fall. There were countless media and onlookers around her, all trying to talk her down. Miss, there are plenty of other men out there. You can find someone better. I couldn't help but nod. Right. There's more than one man in the world. She doesn't need to cling to me. At that moment, the police called out to Sarah. Miss, your husband is here. Sarah whipped around, and I could see the tears in her eyes. As soon as the crowd recognized me, they went wild, pointing at me and shouting. I used to be the one who always gave in, but I wasn't a fool. This wasn't just about my reputation anymore. It was about my future. I immediately pulled out all the evidence I had gathered on Sarah's cheating. In this marriage, I'm the victim. Please get it straight. When the evidence was laid out, the crowd fell silent. But soon, some voices started to speak up. With technology being so advanced nowadays, who knows if these photos and videos are fake? Exactly. If she really cheated, why would she refuse a divorce? She's about to jump off a bridge, you heartless jerk! The crowd became more agitated, and the police tried to intervene. But once one person started, the mob followed. Everyone rushed towards me, punching and kicking. I wanted to explain, but no one would listen. I was curled up on the ground, covered in bruises and blood. Just as I was about to give up, I heard Sarah's voice behind me. Stop! Stop! Tom is telling the truth. I'm the one who wronged him. It was me who cheated on him and had a child with another man. I was the one who made the mistake. Tom, I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. With her confession, my innocence was finally cleared. The crowd immediately scattered. I stood up, wiping the blood from my mouth, and looked at Sarah. I'm tired of hearing you say sorry. I have no demands from you. I won't even ask you to pay back the money. I just want you to keep your promise from yesterday and go with me to the courthouse to get the divorce. As soon as I finished speaking, there was a loud splash. A massive wave of water erupted from the surface. Sarah had jumped off the bridge. The police immediately launched a rescue operation. The river was rushing with fast currents. Sarah surfaced a couple of times, then quickly disappeared beneath the water. Seeing this, I didn't hesitate. I stripped off my clothes and jumped straight in. Thanks to my long-time habit of swimming and keeping fit, diving wasn't a problem for me. I quickly found Sarah underwater and pulled her onto the shore. Her face was pale, and only after some emergency treatment did her eyes slowly open. The moment she saw me, a spark of light appeared in her eyes. Tom, I knew you still... I pushed her hand away when she reached for me. No, I just wanted to make sure you signed the divorce papers before you died. Being divorced is luckier than being widowed. The crowd erupted in laughter. Sarah's face turned pale. I grabbed my jacket and walked off with a relaxed attitude as the crowd cheered. The next morning I finally saw Sarah, struggling to walk toward me. Her face was even paler than yesterday, like something terrible had happened. But I didn't ask. Come on, let's get this over with. Sign the papers. She hesitated, but didn't speak. When I got the divorce certificate, a huge weight was lifted from my heart. On that sunny morning, Sarah called out to me. Tom, if there's a next life, I'll never disappoint you again. She screamed it with all her might, but I remained unmoved. Her dramatic actions had already gone viral the day before, and the scandal about her having a child with Mark was spreading everywhere. The label of scumbag was finally removed from me. Meanwhile, Sarah and Mark became public enemies, the most hated people in the city. I took the divorce certificate and returned overseas. I thought I would never hear from Sarah again, but 3 months later, an email arrived in my inbox. It was scheduled to be sent by Sarah. In the email, she revealed something that sent a chill down my spine. It turned out that on the day she and I went to finalize the divorce, their child had died in the rental apartment. I was shocked. I had given her the money, but the rest of the email exposed the truth. The $50,000 I gave her had been taken by Mark, who claimed he would use it for the medical bills. But instead, behind Sarah's back, Mark had canceled the surgery and sent the fragile baby back to the rental apartment, letting the child die slowly. By the time Sarah found out, it was too late. She hadn't told me right away because she wanted to end everything before letting me know. Ending everything meant that she had waited for 3 days at the airport to catch Mark, who was planning to go abroad. She took out the strong acid she had prepared in advance and poured it all over Mark. Mark's face was disfigured, and his lower body was completely destroyed. He didn't die, but his suffering was unbearable. Even basic bodily functions became difficult for him, and Sarah, in that moment, as Mark screamed in agony, drank the acid herself. In the final line of the email, she wrote, "Tom, I wish there were a next life. I deleted the email and permanently blocked her account. Sarah, you once were a bright spot in my life, but in the end, you were never my guiding light. May we never meet again in the next life. I will be my own light.